The glass doors to our quarterly meeting burst open with such force that the crash rang through the atrium, Rain rushing inside as her face twisted with fury, printouts clenched in her shaking hand. "Stand up," she ordered, her voice slicing through the sudden hush as 200 employees froze mid-presentation. I rose slowly from my chair, confusion flooding me as every gaze locked onto me. "Is this your email address?" She shoved the paper inches from my face, her scarlet nail tapping the header. "Yes. But did you send this yesterday at 4:32 p.m.?" Her words cut off my attempt to respond. An email containing our proprietary formulation for the $50 million government contract had been sent to our competitors, and my stomach dropped. "No, I never." "Liar." Rain slammed her palm onto the glass table, the crack echoing through the atrium like a gunshot. "How dare you betray us like this?" Murmurs rippled around me as colleagues I'd worked beside for 7 years edged away as if betrayal were contagious. "I didn't send it. The evidence is right here." She waved the papers wildly. "Your email, your access code, your treachery." Security appeared in the doorway, men I'd greeted every morning now watching me with icy suspicion. 7 years, Rain continued, her voice rising so everyone could hear my public execution. 7 years we trusted you with our research. You pioneered our breakthrough plant growth formula, the one that helps crops survive drought while remaining completely organic, the one meant to change agriculture forever, and this is how you repay us. My heart hammered against my ribs as I thought of the agricultural biostimulant we created, revolutionary work that allowed farmers in drought-stricken regions to grow crops with minimal water while maintaining organic certification. It had been my life's work. "Pack your desk," Rain said, her voice cutting through my thoughts. "You'll never work in this industry again." The guard stepped toward me as 200 employees watched me walk out, legs unsteady, too stunned to defend myself. At my desk, a guard handed me a cardboard box. 5 minutes, he said coldly. I mechanically gathered my personal items, the photo of my parents' farm, a ceramic mug from college, a few books, 7 years of work, everything fitting into one small box. As I reached for my coat, a hand touched my shoulder, and I turned to see Wyatt, my lab assistant of 3 years, looking uneasy. "I can't believe you did this," he whispered, disappointment etched across his face. "We were so close to changing agriculture forever." "I didn't," I insisted, my voice cracking. "Wyatt, you know me." His eyes flicked to the guards, then back to me. Everyone saw the evidence. Meredith. Hearing my last name instead of Cora cut deeper than I expected as he stepped back, creating physical distance to match the emotional gulf that had instantly opened between us. "Time's up," the guard announced, motioning toward the exit. The walk through the office was agony, faces I'd known for years, people I'd celebrated milestones with and built something meaningful alongside, all turning away. No one met my eyes, no one offered support, and I was already erased. Outside, the bright spring sunshine felt mocking as I clutched my box and watched the glass doors close behind me, cutting me off from everything I'd worked toward since graduate school. My phone buzzed with alerts. "Your access has been revoked, your email account has been suspended due to corporate espionage allegations, direct deposit canceled by employer." In 20 minutes, my entire professional identity had been destroyed. I sat in my car, hands trembling too violently to turn the key, the truth pounding in my head because I knew exactly why this had happened, and it had nothing to do with leaking secrets to competitors. If you're feeling the sting of this injustice with me, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to hear how this story unfolds, and if you've ever been wrongfully accused, share your experience in the comments because your story matters too. My name is Cora Meredith, and until 6 weeks ago, I was the lead agricultural researcher at Nature Growth Solutions, developing organic plant stimulants that could revolutionize farming in drought-affected regions. And now I'm about to tell you how everything I worked for was taken from me in an instant and what happened next. 6 months before my public firing, I discovered something disturbing during routine quality testing. Our organic plant formulation had been quietly altered, several critical ingredients replaced with synthetic chemicals that mimicked growth patterns, but were fundamentally different at the molecular level. Changes invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for, and as the lead researcher who created the original formula, I did. Those synthetic compounds could potentially contaminate groundwater and soil microbiomes. The $50 million government contract specifically demanded a 100% organic composition with strict environmental safety standards, and when I raised my concerns privately with Rain, she dismissed them. The testing panels won't detect these compounds, she said casually, as if we were discussing a minor packaging tweak. We save millions in production costs, and no one will ever know the difference. But it's not what we promised, I argued, and we don't have enough long-term data to know if. Are you questioning my decision? Her tone shifted instantly, eyes narrowing. Because I can always find researchers who understand how business works. I persisted, showing her my findings and explaining the potential environmental impact. The next day, my workspace was relocated from the main lab to a smaller auxiliary room. The week after that, I was excluded from strategy meetings I had always attended. Projects were reassigned. Impossible deadlines appeared for trivial tasks. The message was unmistakable: drop it or be pushed out. Instead, I began keeping alternative formulation samples at home, working nights to perfect a truly organic version that matched the performance of our current product. 3 days before my firing, I noticed my email had been accessed while I was at lunch. The next day, sensitive files were moved on my computer. Now, sitting in my car outside the building that had been my second home, I understood. Rain hadn't just fired me, she'd ruined me. My reputation was shattered, and no agricultural research facility would touch me with accusations of corporate espionage hanging over my head. What confused me was the email. I truly hadn't sent our formula to anyone, but denying it now was pointless. Rain had made sure everyone believed I was guilty. I finally managed to start my car, and as I pulled away from the parking lot, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? I answered. Is this Cora Meredith? A male voice asked. Yes. This is Trevor Wilson from Harvest Sciences. We received an interesting email from you yesterday, but our security flagged it before anyone could review the contents. Given the sensitive nature, I wanted to speak with you directly. My heart stopped. I didn't send you any email. There was a pause. Well, it came from your address. Something about a government contract formulation. That wasn't me, I insisted, pulling over as my hands began shaking again. Someone must have accessed my account. I see, Trevor said carefully. You should know we've already alerted your company about this contact. We take intellectual property very seriously. Of course you did, I whispered, realizing Rain's claim hadn't been entirely fabricated. Someone had sent an email from my account. I just hadn't been the one who sent it. For what it's worth, Trevor added, his voice softer. It seemed out of character. We've met at several industry conferences, and you've always struck me as deeply principled. The call ended, and I sat staring at nothing. I had been perfectly set up. Rain had engineered my downfall while protecting her altered formula. I wish I could say I immediately plotted my revenge, that I drove away from Nature Growth Solutions with a master plan forming in my mind, but the truth was far messier. I spent the first night sobbing in my bathroom, the second day desperately sending emails to contacts who never replied, and the third morning sick with anxiety before my first job interview. I didn't get that job, or the next one, or any of the 12 I applied for over the following 3 weeks. The agricultural research community was smaller than most people realized, and word had spread. I was toxic, untouchable. Former colleagues avoided me, professional connections vanished, and one former mentor answered my call, only to say he couldn't risk his reputation by being associated with me. With rent due and savings dwindling, I made the call I'd been avoiding. Mom, I need to come home for a while. My parents owned a small farm in western Nebraska, 110 acres of increasingly thirsty land that had been in our family for 3 generations. They had scraped together enough money to send me to college, proud their daughter would be the first Meredith with a PhD, never imagining I'd return in disgrace at 34. "We're glad to have you home," my father said that evening at dinner, though the worry lines around his eyes told another story. The farm was struggling. 3 years of insufficient rainfall had slashed yields dramatically. They didn't need another mouth to feed. "It's temporary," I promised, though I had no idea how I would rebuild my career. "I'll help with the farm while I'm here." "We could use it," my mother admitted. "The eastern field barely produced anything last season." That night, staring up at my childhood ceiling, an idea took shape. I still had my alternative formulation samples, the truly organic versions I'd been developing in secret, and I'd brought them with me, unable to abandon years of research even in my rushed departure. The next morning, I approached my father. "Would you let me test something on a small section of the struggling field?" He studied me cautiously. "What kind of test?" "The biostimulant I was developing, the real one, not the version my company corrupted. It could help the soil retain moisture and strengthen plant root systems. And if it fails, we can't afford to lose any more yield." "Just 5 acres, I pleaded. "The worst section that barely produced last year." He agreed reluctantly. Over the next week, I applied my formula to the test plot, carefully documenting every step. While waiting for results, I took odd jobs around town, helping at the local garden center, tutoring high school students in chemistry, anything to contribute to household income. 3 weeks later, the difference was unmistakable. My test section showed stronger seedlings, deeper green coloration, and better soil moisture retention than the rest of the field. My father stood at the edge of the plot, shaking his head in disbelief. "Whatever you did, it's working." For the first time since my firing, I felt a spark of purpose. I still had my knowledge. My research wasn't completely lost, but the victory was bittersweet. While I could help my parents' small farm, the contaminated formula from Nature Growth would soon be applied to thousands of acres nationwide under the government contract. One evening, while helping my mother with dishes, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "It's Wyatt. Got your number from the old team roster. Gov inspection tomorrow, Rain is confident. Everyone's getting bonuses after contract signing next week." I nearly dropped a plate. Wyatt had reached out despite the risk to his position. The inspection, the final step before the contract became official, was happening already. "What's wrong?" my mother asked, noticing my face. I couldn't burden her with the full truth, so I simplified. "My old company is about to secure a huge contract with a product that isn't what they claim it is." She dried her hands and sat at the kitchen table, motioning for me to join her. "When your father's uncle sold diseased seed corn to the Andersons back in '78, it nearly bankrupted them. Your grandfather made him buy back every bushel. Even though it meant taking a loan against the farm, he said integrity in agriculture isn't negotiable, because everyone has to eat what we grow." That night, I lay awake in the dark. Thousands of farms would use the contaminated formula on food crops. I'd tried contacting regulatory agencies after my firing, but without proof, they dismissed my warnings as those of a disgruntled ex-employee. The next morning, I drove to the county library to use their computer, not wanting to leave search trails on my parents' home device. I researched the specific government testing protocols for the contract. The standard procedure involved analyzing samples provided by the company, then comparing them to random samples from production batches. But how could I, now an outsider, possibly influence this process? 2 days passed. Wyatt texted again. Inspection went perfectly. Contract signing on Tuesday. Sorry things went bad for you. I felt physically ill. Tuesday, 4 days away. Once that contract was signed, the altered formula would spread across American farmland with unknown environmental consequences. That evening, I walked the perimeter of our property, breathing in the scent of soil and growing things, trying to clear my head. My phone rang. Another unknown number. "Is this Dr. Meredith?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "This is Leona Hayes with the Department of Agricultural Oversight. We're reviewing some testing protocols, and your name came up as the original developer of the nature growth drought-resistant biostimulant." My pulse quickened. "That's correct. Can you clarify something for me?" In the molecular binding process described in the patent, there's reference to a catalyst that appears inconsistent with organic certification requirements. This was unexpected. According to Wyatt, the inspection had gone perfectly. Yet here was a government official asking pointed questions about possible inconsistencies. The original formula used an enzyme-based catalyst derived from mushroom mycelium, I explained carefully. It's entirely organic. If you're seeing something different, it would represent a deviation from my research. Interesting, Leona said. Would you be willing to review some documentation for us? Strictly confidential, of course. Absolutely, I agreed, hope flickering for the first time in weeks. I'll send a secure link. We need your insights by tomorrow afternoon. After the call ended, I sat on the old wooden fence, my mind racing. Had the inspection actually uncovered issues? Was there still a chance to stop this? The secure files arrived an hour later. I stayed up until 3 in the morning analyzing them, then sent back a detailed report identifying 7 specific discrepancies between the documentation and what a truly organic formula should show. The next morning, I checked my email hourly and heard nothing. By evening, my hope began to fade. I scanned agricultural news feeds, expecting to see preparations for the contract announcement. Instead, there was nothing. Complete silence. The day before the scheduled signing, I woke to a text from Wyatt. Emergency meeting called. Everyone on edge, no explanation. Something was happening. I refreshed news sites repeatedly throughout the day, searching for any mention of nature growth or the government contract. At 4:17 p.m., the headline finally appeared. Major biostimulant contract suspended pending investigation. I stared at my phone, rereading the words as my hands trembled. Suspended. Pending investigation. I called my parents into the kitchen and showed them the alert. "What does this mean?" my father asked. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted, "but something is happening." Within hours, industry forums exploded with speculation. Nature growth stock dropped 12% before trading was temporarily halted. No official statements came from the company or government agencies. That night, another text from Wyatt. "Complete chaos here. Rain locked in meetings with the legal team. No one's telling us anything." I barely slept, refreshing news sites by the hour. The next morning brought another development. Government inspectors returned to nature growth facilities. By afternoon, local news aired footage of people in white hazard suits entering the production plant. The agricultural science community erupted with theories. Former colleagues began reaching out, cautiously at first, then with urgency. "Cora, what's happening?" Phoebe from Quality Control texted. "Did you know about this?" Damien from Research asked. I replied to none of them. Whatever was unfolding needed to proceed without my involvement. 3 days after the contract suspension, Leona Hayes called again. "Dr. Meredith, we'd like you to come in for a formal interview regarding Nature Growth's formulation process." "Am I under investigation?" I asked carefully. "No," she replied. "You're being consulted as the original developer. We need your expertise." The following day, I sat in a sterile government office explaining my original research to a panel of scientists and regulators. I described the organic enzyme processes, the natural mineral stabilizers, the microbial components that made the formula both effective and environmentally safe. And when did the formula change? A stern-faced regulator asked. I noticed alterations about 6 months ago, I said. When I raised concerns internally, I was gradually isolated and eventually terminated. On what grounds? Corporate espionage. I was accused of sending proprietary information to competitors. The panel exchanged glances. Did you? No, I said firmly, but someone used my email account to send something. I was never shown exactly what was sent. They nodded, making notes as the questioning continued for hours, exhaustive and precise. When I finally emerged, the sun was setting, and my phone buzzed with notifications. Nature Growth released a statement filled with polished emptiness. We are cooperating fully with regulatory inquiries regarding our agricultural products and remain committed to quality and compliance. Corporate doublespeak that said absolutely nothing. A week passed, then two, as the investigation continued behind closed doors. I focused on my parents' farm, expanding the test plot and carefully documenting results. The eastern field showed dramatic improvement, undeniable proof that my original formula worked perfectly without synthetic shortcuts. Then came the day that changed everything. I was harvesting early tomatoes from my mother's garden when Leona Hayes called again. Dr. Meredith, the investigation has concluded. I wanted you to hear the results before the public announcement. My heart raced. What did you find? Systematic substitution of synthetic compounds for organic components, falsified testing data, and deliberate misrepresentation to government agencies. Her voice hardened. The environmental impact assessment indicates potential groundwater contamination in test regions. Criminal charges are being filed against several executives, including Rain Blackwood. I sank onto the garden bench. Criminal charges, fraud, environmental violations, conspiracy. The evidence is overwhelming. What evidence? I asked, genuinely curious, since even I hadn't compiled definitive proof before my termination. That's actually why I'm calling, Leona said. The comparison testing revealed something unusual. The verification samples, the ones designated for government testing, contained a marker compound absent from actual production batches. Under extended protocol conditions, it produced a distinctive crystalline pattern that made the substitutions immediately obvious. It was almost as if, she paused, as if someone wanted us to discover the discrepancy. Silence stretched between us. The Board of Nature Growth has requested a meeting with you, she continued. They're in crisis mode. The government contract is permanently canceled. Their stock has collapsed, and they're facing class action lawsuits from shareholders. They specifically asked for you. Why would they want to see me? I asked, though I already knew. They need the original formula, the one that works without shortcuts, the one you developed. 3 days later, I walked into Nature Growth headquarters for the first time since my public humiliation. The atmosphere was unrecognizable. The confident energy of a thriving biotech company was gone. Employees moved quickly with lowered eyes, security guards looked nervous instead of intimidating, and the receptionist who had watched me leave with a cardboard box now stood to greet me. Dr. Meredith, they're waiting in the conference room. The board of directors, 8 people I'd rarely interacted with, sat around the table, looking worn and shaken. Rain was conspicuously absent. Dr. Meredith, the chairman began, thank you for coming. We're facing an unprecedented situation. I said nothing, waiting. The actions taken by former CEO Blackwood were not authorized by this board. We had no knowledge of the formula alterations or the circumstances of your departure. I raised an eyebrow. You had no oversight over a $50 million government contract. Several members shifted uncomfortably. We trusted our executive team, one offered weakly. Clearly, that trust was misplaced. What do you want from me? I asked plainly. We understand you continued your research independently, that you have a functional, truly organic formulation that meets or exceeds the promised performance metrics. I nodded once. We want to license that formulation. Nature growth must rebuild its reputation, and your work could be the foundation. License, I repeated. No, that's not happening. Alarm flashed across their faces. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation. I don't want compensation, I cut in. I want ownership. The room went silent. Explain, the chairman said finally. I'll provide my formula and return as chief scientific officer, but only if the company is completely restructured. I want 30% ownership, I want a board seat, and I want a profit-sharing program for the small farms that use our products. That's unprecedented, one board member sputtered. So is having your entire executive team facing criminal charges, I replied. Your choice is simple, truly rebuild with me or watch everything collapse without me. 3 weeks of negotiations followed. In the end, I got everything I asked for, not because I was a brilliant negotiator, but because they had no alternatives. The agricultural community knew I was the mind behind the original breakthrough. Without me, nature growth was finished. 6 months later, I stood in a field watching farmers gather for our demonstration day. The company, now renamed Restoration Botanicals, launched its first product line under my leadership. The formulation was completely organic, rigorously tested, and performed exactly as promised. Y approached me, now leading our field testing division. The Nebraska trials are exceptional. 37% yield increase under drought conditions. Good, I said, watching a farmer run soil through his fingers while explaining microorganisms to his daughter. Have we finalized the small farm subsidy program? Ready to launch next month? The board approved full funding. I nodded, warmth spreading through me at last. What I had built was more than revenge, it was redemption. Later that evening, as I prepared for a presentation to agricultural extension agents, a news alert flashed across my phone. Former Nature Growth CEO sentenced in fraud case. The article detailed Rain's 5-year prison sentence and a lifetime ban from executive roles in publicly traded companies, with the judge citing the severe environmental consequences of her actions. Standing alone in my office, the same corner office she once occupied, I finally allowed myself to revisit the one part of the story I had never shared with anyone. Not with investigators, not with the board, not even with Wyatt. 1 week after my public firing, when Rain's face drained of color as government agents in hazard suits entered the production facility, she never knew what I had actually sent in that leaked email. In my final hours clearing my desk under the watchful eyes of security, I had carefully swapped the samples designated for government verification testing, replacing them with my alternative organic formula containing a subtle twist, a molecular marker that stayed dormant under standard testing, but produced a distinctive pattern under the government's extended verification protocol, revealing synthetic compounds in the real production samples. When the government inevitably compared the verification samples to randomly selected production batches, the email Rain accused me of sending to competitors, sent from my account by her son or someone acting on her instructions, was never examined closely. They assumed it contained our proprietary formula, but I had anticipated this scenario. The attachment held only harmless, publicly available research papers embedded with hidden metadata designed to guide diligent investigators toward questioning specific testing protocols. It was insurance I'd created and never expected to use. My real revenge was never about destruction. It was about building something better from the ashes of what Rain tried to burn. Where she chased shortcuts for profit, I built sustainable solutions. Where she ruled through fear, I cultivated collaboration. The company that once cast me aside now flourished under my leadership, protecting the very farmers she would have put at risk. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't watching your enemy fall. it's watching your vision rise. If you've ever faced injustice or betrayal in your professional life, I hope this story reminds you that your knowledge and integrity can't be taken from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to rebuild after a professional setback? And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and redemption found in unexpected places.